Павел Купцов.
Окей. Добро пожаловать.
Спасибо большое.
So everyone, I would like to inform you we are now live in YouTube. Have a great seminar today. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. It is a pleasure to open the second day of the fourth edition of the BRICS seminar organized by the BRICS, the study groups on the BRICS, with the support of Ibrashina. And we have the honor and the pleasure of welcoming today for this panel His Excellency, the Ambassador of India, Suresh Reddy. He has been in Brazil since September 2020. The Political Council of Russia, Pavel Kuptsov, the General Council of India, of China, JPG, and the General Council of South Africa, Rudzani Michael. We have also invited representatives from the Brazilian Ministry of Foreign Affairs, but this year, surprisingly enough, they have declined the invitation. So having mentioned this to the other colleagues, I give the floor to Ambassador Suresh Reddy to start with his presentation. Your Excellency, you have the floor. We can consider 20 minutes for each of the participants. Please.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I really appreciate the invitation extended to me by the University of Sao Paulo. And I would also like to greet our distinguished diplomats, colleagues from the other BRICS member states. I'd like to congratulate the University of Sao Paulo and the Department of International and Comparative Law for organizing the fourth BRICS conference of the USP. The event is timely. It is happening in the backdrop of pandemic in a world where questions have been raised on the effectiveness of multilateralism and multilateral institutions. Here we need to remember that this year, 2020, also marks the 75th anniversary of the founding of the United Nations. I would like to start by reiterating that India believes that in the wake of these major challenges in economic, political, and social and health fields, BRICS has an important role to play. Brazil has made a significant contribution to the success of BRICS, and you may recall that it was in Fortaleza that the original decision was made on establishing the NDB. Indeed, in the world of multilateralism, there has been a significant new addition over the last few decades. It is the BRICS. As a plurilateral group, BRICS has already been in existence for over a decade. Originally, it started as a list of the most promising investment destinations. Over 10 years, it has come a long way. Even though it started as a geo-economic group, it has steadily expanded its agenda and today has emerged as an important geopolitical entity. It has many achievements to its credit, like the New Development Bank and the Contingency Reserve Arrangement. It's worth recalling that BRICS brings together 5 major emerging economies, comprising 42% of the global population, 23% of the world GDP, and over 16% of the world trade. The BRICS countries are both recipient and source of around 15% of the global FDI flows. The cooperation in BRICS has a rich agenda covering economic, political, and security issues, besides strengthening people-to-people engagement. It spreads across various sectors, including ICT, education, labor, employment, security, agriculture, trade and investment, science and technology, amongst others. Last month, the foreign ministers of BRICS had met virtually for their annual foreign ministers meeting. There, the ministers had acknowledged the need for stronger international cooperation to combat the effects of the pandemic, to support the socio-economic recovery of millions who were impacted by the pandemic, and to promote greater cooperation in science and technology to address these challenges. The discussions covered the global situation and possible BRICS cooperation on international issues, including the issues in the 75th UNGA agenda. Recognizing the need for reforming the current multilateral architecture and to make it reflective of current realities, India, along with other members of the BRICS, have consistently called for reformed multilateralism, including reform of international bodies like the United Nations, WTO, IMF, WHO, etc. And this call for reform also includes the Security Council in both permanent and non-permanent categories. As members of the Faculty of Law, you would also be happy to know that the ministers reaffirmed their commitment to upholding and respecting international law, including the purposes and principles enshrined in the Charter of the United Nations, and also emphasized the central role of the UN in the international system in which sovereign states cooperate to maintain peace and security and advance sustainable development and ensure promotion and protection of human rights and fundamental freedoms for all. Friends, today we see the headlines are dominated more and more by incidents of terrorism. And as we see the challenges posed by terrorism increasing, the leaders have also highlighted the scourge of terrorism and called for stronger BRICS cooperation in countering terrorism. Here, we would also like to compliment Brazil for developing the BRICS counter-terrorism strategy. As the incoming chair in 2021, we would like to assure our BRICS partners that India will continue the work to strengthen intra-BRICS cooperation in all the three pillars: political and security, economic and trade, and people to people. Indeed, our efforts would be to consolidate intra-BRICS solidarity and provide concrete institutional framework for the purpose. We would also like to take this opportunity to reaffirm our strong support to the Russian chairmanship of the BRICS, and as well as reiterate our appreciation for the successful convening of numerous meetings in spite of the challenges posed by the pandemic, and also the theme, BRICS Partnership for Global Stability, Shared Security, and Innovative Growth. Indeed, though the theme was decided last year, I must appreciate the relevance and the contemporariness of the theme, that today, in a world which is challenged by the pandemic and the after effects of the pandemic, the need for the global stability and the need for shared health security and the usage of science and technology to address these challenges with the innovative growth have become only that much more relevant. In conclusion, I would like to point out that the original objective of making international governance more inclusive, representative, and participatory, with greater participation of emerging markets and developing countries in international decision making, is still a work in progress. In this scenario, it's undoubtedly important that we further strengthen the cooperation in BRICS. But having said that, I would also leave you to debate as to what should be the future evolution of BRICS in the coming decade. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Ambassador Suresh Vridi. I would now like to give the floor to Political Counsel of Russia, Pavel Kuptsov. Please, Counsel, you have the floor.
Thank you so much. I will make my speech in Portuguese. Prezados senhores e senhoras, caros colegas e amigos, com grande prazer gostaria de saudar a realização da quarta conferência do BRICS, organizada pelo Grupo de Estudos sobre os BRICS, GBRICS, da Faculdade de Direito da Universidade de São Paulo. Apreciamos que, apesar de todas as dificuldades causadas pela pandemia de Covid-19, A nossa parceria se torna cada vez mais sólida. Neste ano, marcado pela pandemia, a presidência rotativa no BRICS passou para a Rússia. Ainda no âmbito da cúpula do BRICS, realizada em novembro do ano 2019, no seu discurso, o presidente Vladimir Putin realçou que a melhoria de padrões de qualidade de vida dos povos do país do BRICS é o principal objetivo da presidência da Rússia neste ano. É o propósito essencial da cooperação multifacetada dos BRICS. Como lema da presidência russa em 2020 foi escolhida a parceria dos BRICS em interesse da estabilidade global, segurança comum e crescimento inovador. Entre as tarefas-chave foram definidas a continuidade de trabalho do agrupamento, fortalecimento da cooperação dos 5 em 3 áreas cruciais: política e segurança, economia e finanças, cooperação humanitária. Sem dúvida, hoje em dia, BRICS representa uma força importante da política e economia global. A nossa parceria estratégica como fundamento os princípios de diálogo, multilateralismo, igualdade soberana dos países, de acordo com as disposições da Carta das Nações Unidas. Esse ano, em que nós celebramos a fundação da ONU e aniversário 75 da vitória na Segunda Guerra Mundial, o nosso posicionamento coletivo e solidário a favor da ordem mundial multipolar e democrático é atual, mais do que nunca. Defendemos em unanimidade um mundo que respeita os interesses legítimos de todos os países, que se baseia nos princípios de não intervenção nos assuntos internos dos países, respeito do direito internacional. A importância do BRICS na economia e comércio internacional aumenta anualmente. O PIB dos 5 países esse ano chegou a 25% do PIB mundial. Somos responsáveis pelo 20% da troca internacional de mercadorias. E, o que é mais importante, nos últimos 5 anos, as exportações entre os 5 países aumentaram em 45%. Sem dúvida alguma, essa tendência continuará nos próximos anos, mesmo considerando os desafios representados pela crise de coronavírus. Como prova disso, podemos considerar o fato de que, na atual presidência da Rússia, o BRICS continua a fortalecer a sua parceria estratégica. O BRICS demonstrou a flexibilidade em reagir às mudanças na situação mundial. Juntos, conseguimos manter a continuidade e estabilidade da parceria em todo o conjunto das áreas da nossa cooperação. O total número dos eventos desse ano realizados e a ser realizados no âmbito da presidência da Rússia no BRICS equivale a mais de 150. Claro que a maioria deles no formato online. Entre os avanços práticos da cooperação alcançados nesse ano, podemos já destacar a renovação das atividades do Grupo de Trabalho do Combate a Drogas, a adoção do princípio-chave para a promoção da participação das micro, pequenas e médias empresas no comércio internacional, facilitação de procedimentos para investimentos, adoção da declaração de prolongação permanente do Memorando de Cooperação na área de políticas de concorrência, adoção do Plano de Ação dos Grupos de Trabalho de Investimento e Blockchain do Mecanismo de Cooperação Interbancária do BRICS para o período até o ano 2025. Em plena potência funciona o novo Banco de Desenvolvimento. Já foram aprovados mais de 60 projetos em nossos países, cujo valor total equivale a 20 bilhões de dólares. É notável que o NBD reagiu de maneira mais eficaz aos desafios da pandemia, anunciando a criação do mecanismo de crédito especial, com o propósito de minimizar e combater as consequências da pandemia. Para esses fins, já foram destinados 4 bilhões de dólares. O valor de ajuda previsto poderá alcançar o total de 10 bilhões de dólares. Até o final do ano, em Moscou, será inaugurado o Centro Regional Euroasiático da NBD. A tarefa atual do banco é aumentar o número de acionistas. Entre as iniciativas promissoras, destacamos a estratégia de parceria econômica do BRICS até o ano 2025 e a nota conceitual sobre o desenvolvimento econômico das áreas afastadas rurais. Na etapa final, encontra-se a adoção das iniciativas da presidência russa nas áreas setoriais de cooperação do BRICS. Fortalecem-se os laços de cooperação humanitária e cultural. Aumentam-se os contatos entre os círculos acadêmicos e da sociedade civil. Na área humanitária, a presidência russa, como evento destacante, organizou o primeiro encontro online dos ministros do esporte, no âmbito do qual foi adotado o memorando de cooperação na área de esporte. Esperamos pelos avanços no fortalecimento do potencial da universidade em rede BRICS. Desenvolvemos a cooperação cultural. O Ministério da Cultura da Rússia avançou a iniciativa de produzir um filme sobre as danças típicas do BRICS no âmbito do Festival da Cultura dos 5. Desenvolve-se com sucesso graças ao uso de tecnologias digitais o diálogo entre os países do BRICS. Foram realizados mais de 20 eventos no âmbito do Fórum Acadêmico e Civil, inovação da presidência russa. Como maior atenção, tratamos o tema de cooperação na área de combate à pandemia do Covid-19. Em maio deste ano, foi realizada a videoconferência dos peritos da área epidemiológica para discutir as possibilidades de combate à expansão do coronavírus e elaboração do sistema complexo de prevenção antecipada de ameaças biológicas nos países BRICS. A Rússia registrou a primeira vacina contra o Covid-19, Sputnik V. Os nossos cientistas elaboraram também os medicamentos farmacêuticos que comprovaram a sua eficácia no combate ao coronavírus. Estamos prontos para compartilhar essa experiência com os nossos parceiros do BRICS do mundo. A pandemia comprovou que a maioria das ameaças hoje em dia são de caráter global. Infelizmente, o nosso apelo para elaborar as respostas coletivas a tais ameaças é rejeitar a prática de medidas unilaterais na abordagem de assuntos globais não foi ouvido. Testemunhamos atualmente o crescimento de confrontação, degradação da segurança internacional e estabilidade estratégica. Consideramos que o diálogo e a cooperação alcançados no âmbito do BRICS, com base em igualdade, respeito mútuo e consideração pelos interesses dos seus parceiros, podem servir como exemplo para seguir na área de relações internacionais. BRICS é aberto para parcerias, com todos orientadas para diálogo produtivo, tornando-se um verdadeiro polo de relações internacionais atraente para os outros países, especialmente para países em desenvolvimento e países com mercado de informação. Estamos convencidos de que BRICS poderá e deverá participar de maneira mais ativa na formação da arquitetura global no mundo pós-pandemia. Muito agradeço pela atenção.
Большое спасибо, Consul Rubtsov. Thank you so much, Consul Pavel Kuptsov. I now have the honor to give the floor to General Counsel of the People's Republic of China, Shi Beijie. Please, you have the floor.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, good morning. Distinguished Professor Polo, Your Excellency Ambassador Reddy from India, and my dear colleagues from Russia, South Africa, dear everyone, good morning. I'm pleased to be invited once again to attend the BRICS conference hosted by University of Sao Paulo. USB has followed closely the development of the BRICS and making important academic contribution for years, for the enhancement of BRICS cooperation for years, which should be highly regarded and appreciated. Congratulations. I wish the conference accomplishes success with fruitful results as always. I would also like to thank the Law School and the BRICS Research Center of USB for their kind invitation. And before just at the beginning of this meeting, Professor, I can feel you had a very proud feeling to introduce your law school. Actually, 2 years ago, I visited the law school, and it's really a very good one, very impressive. So I can share your proud feeling. I also would like to say that I share the views expressed by my previous two speakers. I think what they talked are very important and very good. Today, I also focus the agenda, and I'd like to share with you some thoughts on BRICS mechanism, multilateralism, and the prospects of BRICS cooperation. My first point is the BRICS is one of the best practices of multilateralism. Mankind has entered a new era of interconnectedness, with countries sharing intertwined interests and their future closely linked together. Facing common challenges, no country can stand on its own. The COVID-19 reminds us again that the world needs global action more than ever before, and multilateralism is more urgent and important than ever. As Chinese President Xi Jinping pointed out, global threats and global challenges require strong global responses. The spirit of equal consultation, openness, inclusiveness, and win-win cooperation embodied in multilateralism is increasingly becoming the consensus of the international community, as well as an important path for maintaining world peace and development. Protecting each other's interests and solving related problems, safeguarding multilateralism, advocating win-win cooperation, and discarding unilateral bullying has become the necessary and the commanding path to human progress and development. In recent series of high-level meetings commemorating the 75th anniversary of the United Nations, the international community reaffirmed and called for the revitalization of multilateralism. The BRICS mechanism is one of the best practices of multilateralism and an important platform for emerging markets and developing countries to enhance solidarity and cooperation and uphold common interests. Under the strategic guidance of the BRICS leaders, the 5 countries following BRICS spirit of open, inclusive, and win-win cooperation have conducted various fruitful exchanges and cooperation, and have continuously strengthened solidarity and mutual trust, contributed to the people's well-being, making the BRICS a model of a cooperation mechanism between emerging major countries. BRICS countries are also important forces on their respective continents and the key members of international organizations and multilateral mechanisms such as the United Nations and G20, and play key roles in regional mechanisms as well. In recent years, the BRICS countries have actively participated in global governance, maintained close coordination and cooperation on a series of major international issues, and called for expanding the voice and representation of emerging economies and developing countries on major global issues. The international influence of the BRICS has been continuously increasing. BRICS become the important force in promoting the global multipolarization process and in maintaining world peace and development. My second point is unity and cooperation are the cornerstones of the BRICS. Throughout the history of human development, cooperation and openness always lead to prosperity of the international community, while hostility and closure would only lead to decline. The Cold War mentality and the zero-sum games cannot solve the common challenges faced by mankind. Only by maintaining multilateralism and strengthening cooperation can we promote mutual benefit and the win-win results and achieve common development. The COVID-19 highlights that strengthening international anti-pandemic cooperation is a powerful weapon to deal with the issue. The recovery of the world economy under the pandemic also requires open and cooperation. For BRICS, cooperation is the root and the foundation as well as the source of the source of development. Based on the spirit of open, inclusive, and win-win cooperation, BRICS has continuously promoted and deepened cooperation and obtained remarkable achievements. Since BRICS establishment, the total economic growth of the 5 countries has exceeded 179%, contributing 50% toward economic growth, and has become an important engine for global economic recovery and sustainable growth. The 5 civilizations, each having their own unique characteristics, learn from and benefit each other. Rich cultural exchanges, like today's conference held by USB, have become the 3rd pillar of BRICS cooperation. This year, as the COVID-19 pandemic continues raging across the world, BRICS countries all face the same challenge. In spite of the impact of COVID-19, the 5 countries have promoted practical cooperation and held meetings and events in flexible ways to keep up the momentum of BRICS cooperation. In April and September, the BRICS foreign ministers met twice online, reached a broad consensus, and sent out a positive signal of solidarity, coordination, and cooperation against the pandemic by the BRICS countries. The 5 countries all agreed to jointly uphold the steady development of the world economy and to make global public health cooperation a higher priority on the BRICS agenda. In July, the BRICS trade ministers held a meeting and adopted a joint communique and a joint statement. The 5 ministers agreed that faced with severe downward pressure in the world economy, BRICS countries should work together to enhance cooperation and uphold the multilateral trading system, refrain from unilateral and protectionist practices, support necessary WTO reform, and safeguard developing members' legitimate rights and interests. Moreover, the BRICS New Development Bank provided a special loan of $10 billion, effectively helping the BRICS countries to fight the pandemic. So as we see it, looking out for each other in trying times is what the BRICS spirit is all about. BRICS cooperation is showing its strong vitality to the world. My 3rd point is BRICS cooperation enjoys broad prospects. Currently, the world is undergoing profound changes unseen in a century and faces new threats and challenges. Unilateral and bullying acts and protectionism have been on the rise. Uncertainties in global governance are rising. COVID-19 threatens human health. So we need to consider how BRICS countries react to these profound changes and huge challenges and play a constructive role in international affairs. We believe no matter what, peace, development, and cooperation for mutual benefit remain the defining trend of our time. Economic globalization keeps moving forward despite the twists and the turns, and emerging economies represented by the BRICS countries continue to rise collectively. In this context, BRICS countries need to shore up confidence, deepen cooperation, and intensify coordination so as to fulfill responsibility for global peace and development and serve as an anchor of stability in this changing world. With solidarity and partnership, BRICS countries will contribute more toward peace and stability, advance common development worldwide, and promote international equity and justice. Joint endeavors of the 5 countries will not just meet their shared interests, but also benefit the whole world. This is exactly how the BRICS does. The BRICS summit, successfully hosted by Brazil last year, sent to the international community a positive signal of supporting multilateralism, demonstrating the responsibility of BRICS, opposing protectionism, and promoting the construction of an open world economy, demonstrated determination to unite and cooperate for common development, reiterated to carry forward the BRICS spirit to enhance the five countries' traditional ties of friendship, to strengthen BRICS cooperation mechanism, to deepen the three-world drive cooperation, and to boost the high-quality economic development of BRICS countries. This strengthened the BRICS countries' confidence in their future cooperation. The cooperation and development momentum of the BRICS is encouraging so far, and its future is very promising. To this end, the BRICS countries should, first, adhere to multilateralism, uphold fairness and justice, uphold the international law and the international order, champion the approach of consultation and cooperation for shared benefits, coordinate positions, implement the UN Agenda for Sustainable Development, and improve global governance. Second, adhere to unity and coordination, support WHO in playing leadership role in fighting COVID-19, for example. Strengthen joint prevention and control, especially cooperation on vaccines. Come together to jointly combat COVID-19 in an effort to build a global community of health for all. Third, persist in the three-world drive. Deepen all around BRICS cooperation, including cultural exchanges. Promote trade and investment liberalization and facilitation. Provide non-discriminatory business environment to inject more impetus into the post-pandemic world and promote world economy recovery. The BRICS summit for this year will be hosted by Russia next month. So I also appreciate what Russia colleague just introduced, what their efforts for the whole year's work, and particularly for next month's summit meeting. I believe new progress and new outcomes will be achieved. BRICS countries will work together to build the second golden decade and make further contributions to pushing the world economy out of the shadows at an early date, leading globalization towards a more inclusive, healthy, open, and a win-win direction, promoting world peace and development, and building a community with a shared future for mankind. The BRICS influence surpasses the scope of the five countries themselves and has become an important driving force for promoting world economic growth and improving global governance. Both China and Brazil have made important contributions in this process. Of course, all five members make contributions for this process. But here, because it's a WUSB's meeting, so I talk some more words about the China and Brazil. Both China and Brazil have made important contributions in this process. China and Brazil are both major developing countries, important emerging markets, and each other's comprehensive strategic partner has become an example of solidarity, cooperation, and common development between major developing countries, and also example of cooperation in the BRICS as well. As widely known, the cooperation between two countries are in wide range and have fruitful results. While the pandemic negatively impacted all around the world, Brazil's exports to China have grown against the backdrop. The first 8 months of this year, Brazil's exports to China registered a marked increase of 14%. And exports of agricultural products to China increased by more than 30%, indicating that the two countries have solid foundation obvious complementary advantages and huge development potentials for cooperation. The two sides have also carried out good cooperation in the fight against the COVID-19, including strengthening communications at government level, supporting each other and cooperating in the development of vaccine, etc. As two important members of BRICS, the cooperation between China and Brazil has undoubtedly strongly promoted the development of BRICS cooperation in post-pandemic era. While continuing to deepen bilateral friendship and cooperation, China and Brazil can work together to strengthen coordination on the basis of jointly building the first glorious decade of the BRICS, hold high the banner of multilateralism, promote the better development of the BRICS mechanism, send a strong message of unity and cooperation of BRICS countries, and be a staunch force in maintaining world peace and development. In my conclusion, I will say, China will, as always, work together with Brazil and other BRICS members, upholding the BRICS spirit, build together a strong wall of defense against the pandemic, explore broad prospects for win-win cooperation, better benefit the people of the BRICS and the world at large, build a peaceful and stable post-pandemic world and a community of a shared future for mankind. I also look forward to the continued attention, support, and contribution from you, experts, scholars, and my colleagues to the development of BRICS. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you.
General Consul Shi Pengji, thank you so much for your presentation. And as you said, you were with us at the law school 2 years ago. We are glad to have you back with us in this 4th edition of the BRICS seminar. Thank you so much. Now I give the floor to General Consul Rudzani Michael of South Africa. And well, remember his visit last year to the law school when we had the honor to welcome the Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of South Africa. So it's nice to have you back with us this year online as the only way possible, but we expect to have a personal meeting in the 5th BRICS seminar 2021. Let's hope so. Michael Rudzani, you have the floor, please.
Thank you so much, Mr. Paulo Casella, General Director at the Center for BRICS Studies at the University of Sao Paulo. Again, I want to take this opportunity and thank all my fellow BRICS member states representatives, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. It is a great pleasure for me to be part of this important 4th edition of the BRICS conference, convening as diplomats and academia to engage on the role of BRICS and multilateralism in time of pandemic with special focus on BRICS prospects cooperation. Reflecting on the theme in question, I was quickly reminded of the strategic priorities of the foreign policy of the South African government, and I'll just highlight 2 as follows. Through bilateral and multilateral interactions, our foreign policy is aimed at protecting and promoting South African national interests and values, promoting multilateralism, and to secure rules-based international system. Then it is again concurred with the Fortaleza Declaration, which states, among others, and I quote, the BRICS leaders renewed their openness to increasing engagement with other countries, particularly developing countries and emerging economies, as well as international and regional organizations, with a view to fostering cooperation and solidarity in the relations with all nations and peoples, and ready to explore new areas towards a comprehensive cooperation and a closer economic partnership to facilitate market interlinkages, financial integration, infrastructure connectivity, as well as people-to-people contacts, and I unquote. I consider this as a summary of the theme of this conference, and you will agree with me that cooperation among BRICS member states is crucial and should be driven by the desire to make these aspirations a reality in the commitment to cooperate with each other and at every level with the international community. I must admit that we are indeed convening at a critical time when many countries, including BRICS member states, continue to battle the most serious public health emergency our world has experienced in over 100 years, the threat of COVID-19 pandemic. The statistics reveal the majority of BRICS member states as the most affected by the pandemic, with 3 in the top 5 of the most affected countries. This calls for an extraordinary intervention and cooperation in the fight against the pandemic. With this in mind, let me reiterate what President Cyril Ramaphosa said during the 73rd session of the World Health Assembly that was in May 2020, and I quote, "Containing the coronavirus pandemic has dwarfed all other issues facing the international community and individual countries. The pandemic has profound social, political, and security implications for us all. It is impacting on human health, our societies, and our systems of governance. Although the coronavirus pandemic has affected both developed and developing countries, it is the poor who suffer the most. The pandemic has highlighted the dangerous and growing inequality that exists both between countries and within them," unquote. Undoubtedly, the impact of the coronavirus certainly remains the biggest challenge. Countries across the world are faced with the dilemma that has reached a point of continued debate between saving lives and jobs. From global corporations to small business and independent professionals, they are all concerned with the advance of the virus and the measures adopted by governments to contain the disease and the economic crisis. Developing countries have been severely impacted by the pandemic, and in Africa and other developing countries at large, in particular, gains made over many decades have been reversed. In this regard, BRICS should devote time devising effective support measures to assist the most vulnerable. Much more relief and support is required for the economies to recover, for jobs to be created, and for the new industries to be established. Small and micro economies have been destroyed by lockdown restrictions in some cases. BRICS Forum includes the most powerful countries, and more can be done collectively to reverse the worst effects of COVID-19. Global initiatives aimed at developing the vaccine against COVID are a step in the right direction, and an immediate and equal access for all is crucial and should be prioritized. Much more should be done to support research and innovation in developing countries and to invest in health systems that can offer quality care and universal health coverage. BRICS Forum should seek practical ways of building back better. The next global emergency should find the forum better prepared with stronger social protections, health systems, and public services. BRICS roadmap to recovery should include the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals. This will be an opportunity to not only confront the multidimensional challenges posed by the COVID-19 pandemic, but to also ensure that all 3 pillars of sustainable development are advanced in building better to achieve a more just and sustainable future. Decisive, coordinated, and innovative action is required from all member states, putting citizens, especially the most vulnerable, putting them first. Gender equality and empowerment of women and girls will also be at the center of the post-COVID recovery programs. It is then imperative that recovery from COVID-19 pandemic leverages synergies and comprehensive and complementaries between social, economic, and environmental measures for a holistic response to the crisis. Ladies and gentlemen, to give a broader overview, the BRICS strategy as adopted by the BRICS leaders in 2015 in Russia, in the Russian Federation, outlined the following priorities areas for cooperation which are still relevant to address current challenges facing the world today. And I will hasten to mention a few of those strategic priorities, which include trade investment, manufacturing and minerals processing, energy, agricultural cooperation, science, technology and innovation, financial cooperation, connectivity, education, tourism, ICT cooperation, and all those are areas which, for the challenges that we are currently experiencing, we are able to mobilize resources in making sure that the objectives are then implemented in order to achieve the most important goals in saving lives in the face of the pandemic that is so tormenting the world. So in conclusion, I would like to indicate that the establishment of the vaccine research that is being hosted in South Africa, the BRICS partners recognize the need for innovation in the health sector and the need to effectively combat critical health challenges. They thus committed to the establishment of BRICS Vaccine Research Center. So in this regard, so I will indicate that it is indeed crucial that those establishments are indeed used to assist and help the vulnerable. BRICS has remained resolute and in its commitment to strengthen the voice and influence of emerging markets and developing countries, and has irrefutably reaffirmed its support for the promotion of multilateralism in the global economic and political governance system. Timely and vigorous actions by all of our leaders will not only lead to addressing the challenges of the COVID-19 pandemic, but will also contribute to strengthening the foundation for lasting cooperation and solidarity among BRICS countries in order to achieve durable peace, security, development among member states. Muito obrigado. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, General Counsel Rudzani Michael. It is very important to have had the presence and the contributions of all your participants. And this is something which, notwithstanding the contingency of the pandemic, we have achieved to make this 4th edition of the BRICS seminar at USP, the study groups on BRICS at USP. This is an opportunity to share the views on the achievements done over slightly more than a decade, and also to see what are the next steps to be implemented. We will look forward for the statements of the BRICS summit next month, and hope that this cooperation effort will go on. As it was said, cooperation and multilateralism are more necessary than ever in the present world, and the circumstances of the pandemic have shown that we need to work together and that collectively we can do more, as was just said by General Counsel Rudzani Michael. So I thank you all for the presence and the participation in this panel, and wish the successful continuation of your work in Brazil, and hope to see you again in the next year's meeting on the BRICS by the BRICS at USP. Thank you so much, and we can now close this session with renewed thanks to Ibrashina and the members of the BRICS group who have cooperated for setting up and making this meeting happen as we are having the second day today. Thank you so much, and we will soon have the next panel of today. This session is closed.
Thank you so much, Professor. Thank you.